A minute. Got it. Okay.
Do I press got it?
And yeah, you can, sure.
Because it tells me either leave meeting or say got it. So I'm going to say.
You want to say got it for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I am. Let's just see. So we are live.
Okay.
Excited to be on. Yeah, you can, sure. Okay.
It tells me either leave meeting or say. Okay.
Excited to be on. Yeah. Okay. I just had to silence that first.
Okay. I was like, what's going on?
Well, all right, everyone, thank you. What that does is when you go live on Facebook, it also has like a delayed. So if you're talking, you hear that. So I just muted that. So we are not going to hear that. Love technology, everybody.
Oh, you gotta love it.
Oh, yeah. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. So excited that we are here again today. Joe Massaro with Joe Massaro Ministries and Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club. Such an exciting time. I am excited for you, Whitney. Whitney Lane Ward is with us today. And there is a story about how we had connected last year. And for the first time in my life, and I will say this, I agreed to an interview and forgot to put it on my calendar. In the midst of surgeries and all kinds of other things going on. And you have been just so gracious and just so wonderful. Yes. And I so appreciate you. But there's a lot to talk about today. So we are gonna get going and just jump in. First of all, Whitney Lane Ward, why don't you just officially we'll say welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, first I got to say, if I didn't understand what you were going through and give you grace, I would have a heart issue, because if anyone understands, it would be me. So no worries. And like you said, this interview is happening exactly when God ordained it to happen.
Amen.
So yeah. So we're good. We're good.
We're good.
But I am Whitney, and I live in Southern Ohio in a little town called Lucasville. I live in a community called Rubyville. It's so tiny, we don't even have a stoplight. So you talk about rural. I live in middle America, rural Ohio. So I grew up, raised, born in this area until I went to Asbury University to get my degree in creative writing and journalism. And I'm very involved in my church, and I'm a Sunday school teacher, and I work with the youth. I write dramas for them to put on. So that's really fun. And my parents, they're awesome. And I have an older sister named Lindsay. She lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, and with her husband and sons. They're identical twins, so kind of very crazy to try to tell them apart. But and my grandma lives right next door, and so I split my time between being here at home and then living with her, because my grandfather passed away in 2019. So I am very thankful that I can do that. I'm in a point in my life where I can, do that and be there with her and help her and keep her company. So I was saved when I was 10, and best decision I could have ever made, because with my life, I don't know how I would make it without faith and an anchor to hold on to. I'm 34 years old. I don't look like it. I know I look like I'm 12, but but you know what I say, I'm going to make some lucky man a trophy wife someday. We're going to be the same age, but nobody's going to think so. So it'll be good. But yes, that is me in a nutshell.
I love it. But by the way, I love Ohio. I'm a Bronx girl. Moved upstate when I was in my early teens, but my mom is all from Ohio, Youngstown, Dayton, all those areas. So we lived there for a few years. So love Ohio. And I'm in Indiana right now for the last 7 years, which is a big change from where we lived. Yeah, but love it. So we're out there, a little bit more as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. And
no problem.
I love the fact that you're hanging out with your grandmother, and and
Yeah.
helping along those lines. So you are a public speaker and writer.
Hmm.
You seek to encourage, which you already have,
Hmm.
your audience to overcome their circumstances. And I
Hmm.
so understand this. You're someone who has a disability, you say, and it is a wish to help others with illnesses so that they can preserve and scale the mountains they face.
Yeah.
And I love that because I shared it earlier, but I've had a traumatic brain injury at
Yeah.
7. And so I know what God can do and where he
Hmm.
takes us in the midst of something like that. So
Yeah.
before we forget, you can connect with Whitney, and we'll say this a few times at whitneylaneward.com.
Hmm.
We'll post that along with the video. And if you are with us live on Facebook, I should say welcome. And
Hmm.
if you are watching the video, welcome again. And please be sure to connect with Whitney. As you can see, I'm in love with her already. She is just a wonderful sister in the Lord. So we are just having a great time.
Yeah.
So we have already kind of gotten to know you a little bit, which is
Yes.
wonderful. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, before we get into your wonderful book, And They Came with Haste,
Hmm.
which, by the way, I have absolutely loved. And it
Thank
is the
you.
perfect time of the year for this book. And maybe you could just tell us what you just told me about what your book is up for.
Yes, I found out on Tuesday, I think it was. No, it was Thursday. Sorry, it was Thursday. This week has been last week has been a whirlwind. I was in Columbus, which is 2 hours away from me,
Mhm.
3 times, and that's where my doctor's appointments are. Two were for doctor's appointments, but the other was for a speaking engagement. So my days are just running together. But it was on Thursday. I got the email from Eva and with Blue Ridge about the Selah Awards and Eva Everson. And I watched it, and the biblical historical, which and it came with haste, was under was like the last one of the last ones announced. But um I I really did not expect anything. I thought it was a long shot because I know in the Christian world this is a big award. It's
Yeah.
well known, and so many people you know apply for it and submit their work. So I didn't expect anything to happen. And then God gave me a gift, and Eva announced that haste, and they came with haste. I might reference it as haste sometimes just to shorten it, but
Mhm.
she announced that, and they came with haste, scored high enough to final. So I am a Selah finalist, and very, very excited about that, and honored, very honored.
That is so wonderful.
Yes,
Congratulations.
thank
And
you.
I love Eva Marie Everson. She is,
Yeah.
obviously the head of Word Weavers International. I
Hmm.
am president of the Fort Wayne International
Oh,
one, which is
cool.
online. I have
Uh-huh.
interviewed Eva 3 or 4 times. So love this woman. And
She seems fantastic.
she is really wonderful.
Hmm.
All right. So before we get in a little bit more about ACE, and I will refer to it as that, let's talk a little bit about your health journey. If you
Uh-huh.
mind sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of a long story, but I'm gonna try to condense it. But when I was 6 years old, my disease came to a head. I had things before that, but just the things that the pediatrician sums up to, some children are sickly. It takes a little bit longer for them to build up their immune system. Well, everything came to a head when I was 6, and I was tested for so many diseases: MS, cancer, lupus, CF, and they all came back negative, which was good news. But it was also difficult because I didn't have a plan. No one knew what was causing my disease and what would be the best treatment for it.
Mhm.
So many, many doctor's appointments and tests later, I was given a very broad diagnosis of autoimmune hemolytic anemia with combined immune deficiencies, which basically means it's a double whammy. So my body attacks itself with the
Mhm.
autoimmune, but on the other end of it, my immune system, there's a part of it that's broken. So it's very hard for me to fight off infections, and I get chronic sinus infections basically every other month. If I get sick, it can take me, maybe 2 weeks to recover, where a healthy, person might take a couple of days with a cold or a virus.
Mhm.
And so it can be really, tough for me to function at times, especially back then, because they didn't know what they were dealing with, and it was
Mhm.
trial and error. And but thankfully God got me to the right doctors, and who just knew what to do, because God knew he could give them wisdom and guide them. And my hematologist has been my doctor for almost 24 years, and he's actually a Christian, and he just has a sense of what to do, and it's almost exactly right all the time. So once I was put on the right treatments,
Mhm.
I was stable. I could live life. I could, have quality of life and
Mhm.
actually make some memories. But I think it was, uh, I was 21, 21, and I went and saw my immunologist, and he said, "Hey, Whitney, by the way, I sent your case to the National Institutes of Health, and there's a disease that you have some similarities to. I don't know if you'll get a call, but I just wanted to give you a heads up so you're not like, okay, how did they get my information? Who are they? What in the world? 'Cause I'd never heard of the NIH. And that's the, abbreviation. That's what most people call it, NIH. I'd never heard of the NIH. But when he told me that, I just I got this sense that I was about to embark on the most amazing journey, and I
Mhm.
was I was right. I was right. I think it was God whispering that to me.
Yes.
And so I got a call from a nurse named Helen Matthews, and she's the one who starts the ball rolling with the NIH and my doctor, Dr. Sue. And she said, first we start with blood work. We got to see, if we're even going to bring you in for a visit. And so they did, and they knew, like, after the blood results, okay, we can bring you in to the NIH, and we can try to figure out what's wrong with you. But Helen Matthews, nurses, I feel like, are more personable because they're not in the lab all the time. They're, face to face with patients. She was very, very compassionate, and wanted me to realize that most of the time we don't figure out what's wrong with the patient. You'll just be valuable research to us. And
Mhm.
I get why she said that, because I'm sure she had patients who's looked at her with, all this hope and getting their hopes up and thinking it's a done deal. And so I understood. But again, I just like, okay, I understand, but I think I'm going to be different. I don't think I'm going to be like those, patients. So 2 years later, I go to the NIH, and I see this guy, and to me, he looks super young, and he's dressed like what I would think a skateboarder would be dressed like, jeans, boots, flannel. And I'm like, who is this kid? And so I was taken back to my room, and in comes my entire team, with Dr. Sue and this guy. And I was introduced to him, and his name was Ian Lamborn. He came to the NIH, to my main doctor's lab, Dr. Sue, and he was given my case. He was going to the University of Pennsylvania to get his MD and PhD in immunology, and my case had become his dissertation defense. And so he explained to me that he figured out that my disease was caused by a rare gene mutation.
Mm.
And I was the first person in the world to be discovered with this gene mutation. They had never seen it before. And it had mutated at some point in my mother's womb when I was forming. And so it was just kind of like, a miracle they found it. But they also knew this gene was important. And if it ever mutated, then it would probably be horrific. And their assumptions were true and right, because it took them forever to find someone else after me. And what they surmised is most babies are stillborn and or miscarried because the gene mutation is really horrific. So I that was really hard to hear, that you should have never lived, but it also made me feel so humbled and honored to be alive. And I knew I must have had a purpose, and I felt like, my purpose was to tell others, they can climb their mountain, and they can face it, and with God's strength they can make it to the top. And so, God wasn't done yet. He still had another big surprise for me. And I was invited to name my disease and help with it. I didn't think any name that I put out there would be chosen, but I still did. I was honored to be part of the process. And my favorite name that I chose was Magus syndrome. Magus fit the scientific protocol, but it had a special meaning.
Yes.
And it means more in Latin. And it also referenced the Latin phrase, to the greater glory of God, which I thought was perfect because, if you survive Magus, you're a miracle. And so I'm like, this is perfect. I love this, but I don't know if the naming committee will agree with it. So, I wasn't going to get my hopes up. But I was also invited to Ian's thesis dissertation at the University of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of his speech, defense, whatever you want to call it, he said that, there was one more person he needed to thank. And he said that I understood, despite all the blood tests, the weird scientific, tests they asked me to do, which I will preface this by saying I was never obligated to do it. They laid it out, told me what it would entail, and then I decided, do I want to do it or don't I want to do it? I was never pressured at all to do anything. But he said, I understood that it would not just benefit me, it would benefit other people who'd be diagnosed with this disease. So he then bent down behind the podium and he presented me with a bouquet of flowers and a hug. And, right then I would have been great. Cloud nine, I've seen, validated, I have purpose, that kind of thing. Those were all the thoughts, rolling in my head. But then he had one more thing to say. And he's finished the speech with saying, and we've decided to call it Magus syndrome. And my mom was on one side and my sister was on the other side, and I'm elbowing them. I'm like, it chose my name. It chose my name. So it was just wonderful. It was like God was confirming, yes, this is your purpose. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, with the talents I've given you, you're supposed to encourage people, share my name and what I can do for them. And, I've always lived by the motto that my disease doesn't define me. I define my disease, which means, I'm not going to let bitterness creep in. I'm going to be better, and I'm going to see what I can do. I might have to get to the mountaintop a little bit differently
Yes.
than other people because of the mountain that I face, and it might take a little bit longer, but God always makes it worth it. And so definitely that's what I feel like I'm supposed to do, and that was God's purpose of these health issues that I face.
That is so true. I just love it because I can so associate with everything
Mhm,
that you're talking about, because I
mhm,
so believe that, in my encounter with God one day,
mhm.
my brain was like, just I felt like a tornado was going on in my head all the time. Uh
Yeah,
so many things that I lost, that God has just brought all those things back to me. And I still deal with things in my life,
yeah,
but you know what, but I believe that God has a plan and a purpose
mhm,
for each of us, and for everybody who is listening,
yes,
no matter what the situation may be, that God has a plan and a purpose.
yeah,
My plan is different than yours,
mhm,
and from anybody else's, but I want to walk in that journey
yeah,
that God has planned for me. And so
mhm.
I'm excited for what he's doing. How was your
Mhm.
health today, by the way? How are you doing?
I I've had some stumbling blocks, but I am learning how to balance and get my health under control. I was just diagnosed with diabetes,
Hmm.
and so that that is a massive like disease. Trying to figure out, for me, it's trying to figure out what I can even eat, not the shots of insulin. It's like, okay, what can I put in my body? Because I also have colitis, so it's just, for me, it's just a balance. But I am getting things under control. I'm
Good.
feeling much better because these last 3 years, it's just been one health crisis after another.
Yes.
But I'm doing 10 times better, and I'm so thankful I'm over what I am. And I like what you go through. God will always produce fruit. And so these health issues that I've gone through these last few years have actually been answers to how to treat other things that I'm dealing with. So if
Mhm.
I would have never gone through those health issues, they
Yes.
wouldn't have figured out, oh, this medication helps you with this. So, you have to look at that, or you will get overwhelmed. You have to look at the gifts and the roses that God gives you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so it was hard, but it was also fruitful.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, and they came with haste,
Yes.
and you will refer to it as haste at time, and I
Taste.
will as
Yeah.
well. Yes, so if you want to let's take a few moments and let
Okay.
Whitney read a little bit to you, because I think what she's going to read is very powerful, and I will tell you this, that it just drew me in, and I didn't want to stop. So I read it. I mean, I couldn't put it down, so
Oh,
it was
awesome.
wonderful.
Okay. I'm going to read the first chapter. It's only 3 pages long, so don't get worried. I'm not going to read like 40 pages here. But yeah, I'll read the first three, and it kind of gives you a taste of what this is about.
Mhm.
So here we go. For several generations, my family raised sheep in Bethlehem. That is all I have ever known. From generation to generation, the flock passed down from father to oldest son. And since Papa was the oldest of his family, he inherited the flock. The sheep were used for many purposes: wool for clothing, milk for nutrition, and the most important purpose, sacrifice, to
Mhm.
atone for Israel's sin. Each year, Papa would make the trek from Bethlehem to Jerusalem to sell to the priests the male lambs fit for sacrifice. And they were fit, only the best for God, Papa liked to say. Bethlehem's endless and prosperous rolling hills and babbling streams made raising sheep the trade for many men. Custom said the youngest son was to be the shepherd of the flock until eventually every son would receive the honor of being the family shepherd. When the patriarch became wrinkled and gray with age, the oldest son inherited the flock, his birthright and blessing. Other men had sons. Papa had daughters. This honorable tradition between father and son caused Mama to apologize with each child she bore. Samuel, my love, I am so sorry it is not a son, she spat in exhaustion. She held her newborn to her chest with fierce protection, unaware she almost dared Papa to be disappointed with the daughter she'd produce. Papa would smile and softly caress Mama's damp and salty forehead. I care not if it is a son or daughter. I care if the child is healthy. Besides, Rachel, my daughters will be more than worthy wives. Not only will they know how to run a household, but they will also know how to run a flock. And that is exactly how my parents raised my 4 sisters and me. The daughter who was the family shepherd would rise at sunup with Papa to attend to the sheep. After the midday meal, she remained home with Mama to learn the makings of a proper Jewish home and honoring Yahweh when managing a family. In the afternoon, our 2 hirelings assisted Papa, and then the hirelings would sleep with the flock at night. Our neighbors marveled at our family. A daughter's place was in the home at the knee of her mother. But Papa and Mama determined our house would not function on legalistic ideologies, but would be filled with love and compassion. The women in Papa's household were not just objects to be used for cooking, cleaning, and childbearing. All of us had a purpose and a contribution to give. As the youngest shepherd of the family, I remained with the flock the longest, until I was betrothed at the age of 13. Yahweh gave me a special love for and fierce protection of my flock, and I determined to give them the best. My sisters were always eager to remain home and work with Mama. Disappointment's hand clutched my heart when my time with the flock ended. But Papa insisted I learn how to become a proper wife. I craved adventure. I wanted my purpose to be bigger than being some man's wife. I understood the importance to be taught the ways of the household because I knew a marriage union was my fate, as it is for every Jewish woman. My head knew this fact, but at the end of each day, my heart was with the flock. The sheep pasture was my place of peace, with gentle winds causing the wildflowers to wave at me and the sheep grazing in the luscious green grass. My world felt perfect. The slow days were my favorite. I would play the flute our hireling Andrew carved me. My fingers perfectly touched the 5 melody-producing holes. I pretended it was a harp, and I, Hadassah, was a master musician like King David. The sheep gamboled about in delight, and I knew I was the center of their whole world. The first time I defended them terrified me. Once, when I was 8 years old, the sheep became restless, not leaving my side. A lioness crouched on a rock near a mountain, waiting for the opportune time to come after her prey. Papa! His teaching became my instinct, and I stiffened my limbs as a statue. Look up on the rock. There's a lioness. Papa's stance mirrored my own, and he followed my gaze to the beast. His sun-kissed finger pointed. Hadassah, the time has come for you to defend your flock. His words almost caused me to run, which would only signal the lioness to pounce. But I cannot. What if I fail them? Papa did not falter in his confidence. I have taught you what you need to know. Your flock trusts you, and with that trust, combined with the help from the Lord your God, you will not fail them. My hand trembled so much as I grasped with difficulty one of the stones I kept in my receptacle. The lioness saw my movement and responded with a deafening, vicious roar. She jumped off the rock, running swift and smooth as wind. The predator's intent hid nothing. I placed the small, smooth stone in my sling, and righteous indignation fired into my heart. No lamb would leave my flock today. I swung the weapon several times around my head, then taking a large step forward for leverage, I launched the stone with all my might. Papa and I watched as the stone sailed in the air, hitting Linus's back with amazing accuracy. The blue sky echoed with howls of anger and pain. The sheep recognized the victory. They leaped in joy about my feet, their happy bleating blotting out the lioness's defeated whines. An exhilarating warmth filled my cheeks. My calling was complete and sure. I had kept my sheep safe, and God had provided my first victory. I knew the Lord placed the mantle in my hands to be this flock's protector. But just as Papa taught me how to protect and care for the sheep, he taught me to learn from them as well. I turned 6 years old the day I became the new shepherdess. It was on this day that Papa gave me wisdom I will remember until the day I go back to dust. He placed his hands on my small and delicate shoulders, our eyes leveled. Already feeling the importance of my role, I took Papa's words and hid them in my heart. Hadassah, just as Jehovah Jireh has a purpose for every person, so he does with every lamb. And on a rare occasion, there might be a lamb that has a divine purpose. I did not really understand his words. My pure innocence told me my sheep's purposes were to be my friends. Years later, I understood how true Papa's words were. You may assume Papa's prophetic proclamation rang true in a strong, perfect lamb fit for sacrifice, but it was quite the opposite. The divine purpose came in a maimed lamb, a lamb I named Haste.
See what I mean? As you're reading, I kind of envision all of these things happening and can see her in my head. And it's just a powerful story. I fell in love with this so much. I'm so excited that you got to read that. Now what you need to do is buy the book so that you can see what happens, because it is amazing how that story has woven into what it does as we get to the end of it. It's just powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank
How
you.
how did this develop? I mean, how did you actually have the idea to start this and to write it?
It was not my idea, actually.
I know.
Yes, yes. So actually, in my book, my assistant pastor wrote the foreword. And the reason he did is because he had the idea, but he didn't have the time or the, thought process or, just also, he didn't have the tools either. Like he could write, but to put like a whole book together, you know, I was trained to do that. So, I went to college for it. So all these different things, led him to come to me and say, hey, I have this idea. And I want you to take it. You have full creative, license to do whatever, however, but this is the gist of it. I envision this lamb, this maimed lamb who is born to a shepherd family in late BC, and this and this is what I want to happen. I'm not going to share it because it's a part of the twist. But and I just want you to take it and run with it. So I was honored because it was actually during a very dark time in my life, and I didn't really have a whole lot going with health issues and treatments and all that. And I think God knew I needed something. And so he gave that to me, and I put all my time and energy into extensive research, you know, like writing it and, trying to figure out, okay, how are these twists and turns, going to be put together? And, highlighting specific things from my research that, oh, I want to include this, but I don't want to include that. And so it actually took 7 years for me to finish because, one, the research took a while.
Mhm.
But then, I had it edited and looked at by an agent slash editor. And there was a lot of, at that time, things that needed to be fixed and reworked. So I'm a person when that happens, I am very much open to criticism and open, open and honest, constructive criticism. But I read it and then I have to take a step back.
Yeah.
And, like it's almost like, okay, it's overwhelming. I gotta let that overwhelming feeling, tidal wave, go away. So, I did that, and it was very helpful because it gave me new perspective, and I was able to go back and rework it
Mm.
and do what was suggested to me, and it very much helped the story because I got a book contract from Elk Lake, and and then it was kind of cool because I had one ending, and then my awesome editor-in-chief, Deb Haggerty, came back and was like, "Oh, I was
What about
kind
this?
of I was kind of like sad it didn't end this way." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that would be a much better ending," So I was like, "I didn't even think about that. That's perfect." So I did it how she said to end it, and it just it just brought the book, I feel like, full circle, and it
Mm.
was it was the perfect ending um for And They Came with Hate. So
So the assistant pastor this person initially who had this, what is he, have you talked to him about the award and what?
yes, he's very, very excited. See, he had originally pictured it as a children's picture book.
Mhm.
But when I started writing, it is true. I've heard it before. A Unless you write a novel, I don't feel like you understand it, because before I wrote this novel, I hear people say, your characters speak to you and they guide you along and all that. And I'm like, you have the pen, like you're you're controlling it. But it's so true, because when I started writing, like, this isn't a children's picture book,
Mhm.
this is a coming of age historical biblical novella. And so but yes, and so when he read it, he's like, you exceeded my expectations, because he didn't see it that way either until he read what I had put together and what God had given me. So I told him about the Lord. He is so excited. He's like, when will you find out? Like, not till May, but but it's the cool thing with Selah, it's a big honor just to even be a finalist.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
So
again,
thank
congratulations
you.
to you on that. So
Yeah,
excited. What,
thanks.
and it is, for someone like myself as well, I'm working on my first children's historical fiction,
Oh,
and it will be a
cool.
series. And so,
Hmm.
I always think that it's going to be like, with health issues and all the things that have gone on, what
Hmm.
it is, that, so I've kind of like taken it off like the time frame. I'm just
Hmm.
allowing God to just work in the way that he wants to work with it.
Hmm.
And so what would you tell somebody who says, I have a story, or,
Hmm.
I want to begin writing,
Hmm.
something, that might help them along the way. And I think you have already, but maybe
Yeah.
if there's something else you need to want to share.
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, pray about it. God will give you direction on how to start. I think that's first, the big thing. And then, go to other writers that you trust and talk to them and explain, what you want to write and how, you want to go about this, and see if it's practical and if it's a good direction, because I've had people approach me and they want to write the story and get it published, but they have no idea how the publishing world works. And
Mhm.
and they think that it's very simple and easy to get a book published.
No.
No, it's not. So I mean this in the most gracious way. I almost have to give them a wake-up call in the sense where, okay, this is how a book is published. And this is what you have to do. And it usually takes a very long time.
Yes.
Find an agent, find a publisher, and then you write the book, and then it takes a year to put it together to be published. And they get super overwhelmed. And it's not meant to, overwhelm them. I just want them to understand, this is how the publishing world works. And so they realize, you don't write the book and, oh yeah, I'm done. Let's, let's publish it,
So much more.
yeah. So then I explain that to them, and if they're truly committed and they're like, okay, that's overwhelming, but I still feel like God's calling me to do this, then I give them advice, write it, and then find an editor or a beta reader who can go through it and say, okay, well, I see it going this way or that way.
Yep.
And then, go back and read it, because they might not be right. I've always appreciated that my editors saying, this is what I think, but if you don't agree with it, and most of the time I agree with it, because their eyes are fresh, and they're in this business, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I would just add too, on my website, which is joemassaroministries.com, I have for me, I believe it is an incredible resource page.
Oh, cool.
I have conferences, I have books, I have websites, yes. I have podcasts.
Yeah.
Just learn. It is a learning process.
Yeah.
I learn all the time.
Yeah.
And I learn from talking to people, being on different groups. And being, like Word Weavers has been really incredible for me, critiquing, what you're writing, just an incredible journey.
Yeah.
I encourage you to go on there if you can and take a look at it and see what, hopefully it will help you, whoever is listening, because it helps me. I have to tell you, I go back and I'm listening to things. Yeah.
And I was going to say, I've actually printed out your Word document or Excel sheet, and it is so helpful what you've put together, and it's a huge blessing that you do that for authors. And you mentioned critiques, and so one thing I was going to say was what helped me tremendously to get published was writing conferences. And I don't think I would have gotten published without writing conferences. But the cool thing about writing conferences is a lot of them offer critiques from professionals, whether it's an agent or an editor. And that's one thing I did with And They Came with Haste. And Tessa Hall, a lot of people know her. She is an editor and an agent, and she's the one who edited the first 3 chapters of And They Came with Haste. And she gave me so much valuable things to think about. I was a little in shock because, it was the first time really anyone looked at it that wasn't biased, so to speak. And so it's like, whoa, there's a lot of notes on here, but it made Haste better. And it was totally worth it. So look into that too when you go to a writing conference. If they have critiques from a professional, it's well worth the money to do that.
And I love the relationships that I have built over the years.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I know that I can call upon someone and say, hey, what do you think about this or that? So my very first conference I went to was Carol Kent's Speak Up conference.
Oh, okay.
I went by myself, had not a clue about anything, and they opened their arms to everyone there, and it just made me feel so comfortable.
Yeah.
So I would definitely encourage you to check out that resource page and find, because there's all kinds of
Mhm.
conferences. Some are virtual, some are both in person.
Mhm.
It's definitely
Yeah.
check that out. So tell us a little bit more about Haste. What else is there anything else you want to say before we
Yeah.
begin to close out?
Yeah, I would just say that, it's a historical novel and it's fiction. So some of it was just, creative thoughts. Okay, like this could have been, like I don't know if it really happened, but it could have happened.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it, but I also wanted to make it as historically accurate as possible. So that's one thing I would encourage you when you're writing a historical, especially biblical. You want to get it as accurate as possible. So I mean, not only did I, print out page upon page of research notes, I was texting my pastors and asking them, questions, or like, hey, you preached on this. Can you give me these notes that they'll help me with my book? And that kind of thing. So, you know, with the historical uh novel, there's a reason there's historical in it. You got to make it historically accurate. And of course there are going to be some, like creative license, because there's some things we just don't know, but
Mhm.
history shows that it could have been.
Right.
But the things that absolutely are, you got to make that, historically accurate and right, especially when you're dealing with a Bible story. And so that's one thing I would just, I would put out there. Make sure you do your research really well,
Yeah.
and talk to pastors, historians, anyone you can about what you're writing about.
So true. So true. Okay. So what are you reading anything right now? Anything special that you want to share?
Yeah, well, I can't share exactly what it is, but I had a writing friend who messaged me, and it's kind of cool because she read And They Came with Haste, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, I loved this. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't know that, you know, you could write a novel, because up until this point I had only done children's picture books and my memoir. I hadn't done any like fictional stuff."
Mhm.
And she said, "You did so well weaving the history and all that." She's like, "I have a novel that I'm working on, and I was wondering if you would read it and possibly consider collaborating on it with me, because I loved what you did with And They Came with Haste." So I am reading it. I knew like several chapters in that I did want to collaborate with her, but I'm going to finish the novel, and then we're going to have a Zoom meeting and decide how this collaboration's
No,
gonna look. But it's cool because it came from
sorry.
And They Came with Haste.
Yes.
So yes.
I love collaboration. So when you guys do this and work it all out, you connect with me, and we will definitely get you both on.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we
so
would
that
love
would
that.
be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that there are, let me just mention this again, it's whitneylaneward.com where you can connect with
Mhm.
Whitney, and she would love to speak or whatever it is you would
Yeah.
like to do. Please, I encourage you to connect and read the book, because like we said, it is really, there's twists in there that, is I was like, oh my gosh. And so very excited. So maybe for somebody who is going through difficult times right now, and I know, for myself, we have gone through difficult times.
Mhm.
But we have God who has been there with us and sustained us. And
Yep.
maybe what advice might you give for someone? And maybe you could pray.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, when you're in the midst of hard times, it's really, really easy and just a human response to focus on what you can't do. And that will just get you in a funk, and you'll, start to, feel pity and,
Depression.
bitterness. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have your feelings, because you should, because a lot of times that's what helps you to keep climbing the mountain.
Yes.
But there comes a point when you have to say, okay, I have to shift my focus, and I have to look at what I can do, and do that. Don't just look at it, do it. Put action behind what you see that you can do. And also one huge thing is, the best way to get you out of, like, sulking about you, and just thoughts like, okay, I can't do this, oh, woe is me, is to do something for someone else. That's one of the biggest things that you can do that will help you, and it won't only help you, it will make you feel good. Something just as simple as sending a card to someone. It doesn't have to be this extravagant, like, surprise. It can just be a card, maybe with their favorite, gift card, to, like, McDonald's, or Tim Hortons or something. So that is what I would encourage you, to do. Focus on what you can do, not your can'ts, because if the enemy can get you isolated and away from others, where you're just thinking about, I can't do this, woe is me, nobody likes me, then you're on a dangerous path. And like, you said, Joe, depression and
Absolutely.
it could even lead to suicidal thoughts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so focus on what you can do. Find your tribe, find your circle. Have them hold your arms up. There's been times when I've had to tell my friends, okay, it's my turn, I need you to hold my arms up. Be honest with them, because if they're godly friends, that's what they're there for. So anyway, yes, that's the advice I would give you. And it's not me just telling you, I've done it from experience. So, it's just not me just saying do this, and like, me not do it. I've done it, it helps, and it gets you back on track.
When I speak before women, which I love to do, by the way, so connect with both of us, please. I love to talk about the fact that there are times in my life when I have worn masks, to be somebody who you think somebody else wants you to be.
Yep.
And or to be looking at someone else and say, oh wow, look at them. But God wants you to be who you are. He has designed you to be. And so I would just encourage you as well. Everything that you have said is absolutely true. We have both lived through so much of this. And I just am trusting God to know, because I will tell you this, that I am going to be 73 this year.
Wow. I would have not guessed that at all.
And so thank you for that. But I believe that it is God, because I believe that God has just given me, and believe me, I have days when I feel, like, oh my gosh, from everything that I've gone through. But I will tell you this, that my heart and my spirit, man, is, is young, and that I have dreams and visions that even at my age, listen, this is young. I believe that God is going to send me to Africa, and that he has plans for me to do all these things. And I may not see them all come to fruition, but somebody else after me will. And so I'm just going on this journey, and just like you, and just trusting God that he is going to do all that he has in my life. I just want to be prepared and get my health to where I need to be. Because when my feet hit Africa, I know that God has planted them there from the time I was a young child, when I had a dream that I would be going. So you know what? It's all in God's timing, is it not?
Oh, yes. It is. It definitely is. It's hard to trust in it.
Yes.
But you see when it comes to fruition that it was the perfect time.
Oh my gosh, this has been like an incredible time spending with you.
Thank
Again,
you so much for having me.
so it's whitneylaneward.com. Be sure to
Mhm.
connect with her. Be sure to get the book. You are going to love it, love it, love it. Maybe you could close us out in prayer if you
I
wouldn't doing that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, and thank you for this time Joe and I could spend together. I very much appreciate this opportunity and this ministry that Joe has for authors, and to get their message of hope out there. And I just pray that the time that Joe and I have spent talking has been fruitful. I pray that who needs to hear our words will hear them, and that you will plant seeds. And I love that you are the perfect gardener because you never forget to water your seeds. And I just pray that they're fruitful. I pray for anyone who's going through something right now, and they've listened to what we've said, that they'll just receive hope and encouragement. I pray that by listening, to us, and hearing the obstacles we both face, that they'll see that nothing is impossible with you, and you'll reignite those dreams and visions and talents, and just please instill in them that you have created them for a specific and one of a kind purpose. Nothing you do is in vain, Lord, and we thank you for that. We just love you and praise you, and once again thank you for this time. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Well, my dear friend, and now that I consider you such a dear friend and sister in the
Same.
Lord,
Mhm.
thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
I would ask that you subscribe to the YouTube channel as you're watching this. And you can go to my website, Joe Massaro Ministries. There are close to 60 interviews on there now that you can listen to, and Whitney now is one of them. So I
Yes.
know that we will see you again, and just trusting God for that. And thank you, everybody. WhitneyLaneWard.com. Make sure you check it out and connect with Whitney. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank
Blessings,
you,
my sister.
everyone. Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone. See you next time.